So what? But I filmed it, had it lip-read, translated and transcribed. Rather like the classic 1974 film The Conversation, starring Gene Hackman and John Cazale. You know, Coppola slipped that one out between The Godfathers. Yeah, it wasn't really for me. It's a bit boring, to be honest.
Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. You're watching the first part of a series where I will analyze the production, sound mixes and legacy of Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation, a film which is being rediscovered by new generations in recent years. Just like Hugh Grant says in a scene of Guy Ritchie's The Gentleman, Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation is kind of an obscure film which was released between the two Godfathers.
One of the sad things about this film is that when Coppola made it, it was between the two big Godfather pictures.
Right. And
it was ignored by the studio, it was overlooked by the public, it won an Academy Award nomination that still didn't get it an audience.
Probably that is the main reason many people do not pay attention to what I consider one of the best films directed by Coppola, and certainly one of the best movies from the 70s American cinema, a period which is also known as the New Hollywood Renaissance. In this episode I will analyze the influence that Michelangelo Antonioni's film Blow Up and George Orwell's novel 1984 had in the inception of Coppola's film.
Due to the very surprising and unexpected success of The Godfather, I eventually found the money to do it. And so The Conversation was sandwiched between those two big movies and was probably only made because of the success of The Godfather.
The shadow of the Corleones is too long. However, we shouldn't forget The Conversation for several reasons.
Grand Prix International du Festival Cannes 1974, The Conversation, La Conversation Secrète.
It won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, and it was nominated for the Oscar in several categories that year.
We should go directly to the nominees.
Let's just do that.
Okay.
The nominees for the Best Picture of the Year are...
For the Best Adaptation, the directors nominated are
The Conversation,
Francis Ford Coppola for Godfather Part 2,
The Godfather Part 2,
and the winner is...
However, Coppola lost against himself.
Godfather Part 2. Francis Ford Coppola, great.
The Godfather Part 2 defeated The Conversation by winning the awards for Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Film.
I almost won this a couple of years ago for the first half of the same picture. That's not why we did The Part 2, however.
I have watched The Conversation several times, and as a teacher at a film school, I have used it dozens of times in my classes for my students. Every time I watch it, I discover something new, and I understand what Scorsese says about Lawrence of Arabia.
It's an odd film because it never seemed to be finished, the film. I can't tell you what the ending is. It seems to go on and on.
And that is probably why I feel kind of obsessed with it. Another aspect to consider from this film is its unique and revolutionary sound design. Credit to Walter Murch, who also helped in the development of the story. And finally, The Conversation has a legend itself for being a visionary movie.
Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Written by Coppola in the late 60s and shot in 1972, it anticipated the Watergate scandal.
The idea for The Conversation came to me in two ways. One, a abashed desire to imitate or to be inspired by one of the greats of that period and forever, Michelangelo Antonioni, who had made Blow Up. And Blow Up was a very beautiful film, intriguing film, because it combined Antonioni's sense of mood and personal texture and sort of nonverbal filmmaking with a very curious plot.
Once he gained international reputation after the tetralogy formed by L'Avventura, La Notte, Le Grise, and Il Deserto Rosso, Italian director Michelangelo Antonioni made a 3-film contract with MGM and the prolific Italian producer Carlo Ponti. The first of those films would be Blow Up, which was a commercial hit and won the Palme d'Or at Cannes Film Festival. The echoes of Antonioni's Blow Up in The Conversation are obvious. Both The Conversation and Blow Up tell the story of an obsession through an investigation. Blow Up was based in a short story called Las Babas del Diablo. In the book, written by the Argentinian novelist Julio Cortázar, the main character is Roberto Michel, a Chilean translator living in Paris, who is also an amateur photographer. In the film, the protagonist is a fashion photographer played by David Hemmings, who lives and works in the swinging London of the 60s. In addition to his work, he is compiling a book of photos about the city. One day he discovers a crime through the developing and blowing up of a picture taken in a park. The more he blows up the image in order to get close to the answer, the more abstract and grainier it turns.
Somebody was trying to kill somebody else.
In the end of the movie, he gives up to solve the mystery, feeling completely disoriented, and joins a street clown company taking for granted the absurdity of existence. Like one of Antonioni's previous films, L'Aventura, Blow Up is a mystery story without a resolution. Both David Hemmings in Blow Up and Gene Hackman in The Conversation have a common aspect. They are highly skilled professionals in their areas. They can see more or listen more than a naked eye sees or a naked ear hears by enlarging the photograph or cleaning and editing an audio recording. With their skills, they seem to have a microscope to study the reality and find things no one else can.
I came up with the idea that one area of film that I thought was very fascinating was the concept of repetition, that almost repetition itself could be both hypnotic and could make points or clarify ideas in very subtle ways.
It's funny how in the very first scene of The Conversation, a street clown tries to tempt Gene Hackman, just like in the ending of Blow Up. It looks like Coppola wants to make clear his admiration for Michelangelo Antonioni and the influence of Blow Up.
In addition, there was the germ of a story or a premise that was implanted in my mind out of a conversation with the wonderful director Irvin Kershner, who was walking with me and some friends and was talking about new technology, how now there were shotgun microphones that could be focused in almost with sights like a gun on the mouths of people very, very far away and could pick up what they were saying. And immediately I thought, wow, what if there was a conversation? How curious if that conversation had some mystery implicit in it, not unlike the photo taken by accident in Blow Up. And I began to think of this as a possible premise for a story.
The Conversation portrays a world of surveillance and paranoia, like the dystopian novel 1984, written by George Orwell, another major influence on the film. The main character is a civil servant called Winston, who works in the Ministry of Truth. The Big Brother watches and listens everything that everyone does at all time, in order to control your behavior, your relationships, and eventually your thoughts. Does it remind you anything?
Mr. Zuckerberg, would you be comfortable sharing with us the name of the hotel you stayed in last night?
This visionary novel written by Orwell in 1949, just 1 year before he died, was so influential that gave birth to a specific word in practically every spoken language: Orwellian. Orwellian is an adjective which describes a brutal policy of draconian control by propaganda, surveillance, disinformation, denial of truth, and manipulation of the past. 1984 has had 3 official screen adaptations. The first one was a telefilm produced by BBC in 1954, starring Peter Cushing. The second one was a feature film released in 1956 and directed by Michael Anderson. And the last official adaptation, and probably most known, was the version released in the same year that gives the novel its name. It was directed by Michael Radford and had the English actor John Hurt in the role of Winston. However, there is an unofficial adaptation which has a very close relationship to The Conversation, THX 1138, a feature film written and directed by George Lucas, which was produced by, guess who? George Lucas attended the film school at University of Southern California, where he met Walter Murtz, who would become later the sound designer of the Godfather trilogy, Apocalypse Now and The Conversation. Both Lucas and Murch developed the story for short film Electronic Labyrinth THX 1138 for EB.
It was based on a script that Matthew and Robbins and I had written.
The EB, as I recall, stands for Earthborn.
The essence was a man escaping from an underground society that was heavily reliant on video monitoring.
Based unofficially on George Orwell's 1984 and Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Thanks to that short film, Lucas earned a 6-month scholarship for Warner Brothers to attend the shooting of professional films. At that time, Coppola was directing Finian's Rainbow, starring Fred Astaire.
Would you tell something about your young assistant, George Lucas?
Oh, he's not my assistant, actually. Associate.
Associate, okay.
George won an award to come to Warner Brothers and observe a film being made there, and he came when we were making Finian's Rainbow.
Francis and I were very good friends right from the moment we met. We're very different. Francis is very flamboyant and very Italian and very sort of go out there and do things. I'm very sort of, well, let's think about this first. Let's not just sort of jump into it. And so he used to call me the 85-year-old man.
You've got to really want to do something, and then nothing can stop you, I believe.
When the scholarship finished, Francis didn't really like his experience making Finian's Rainbow. He wanted to get back down to doing street films.
We got the cameras, we got the idea. What do we have to have, Warner Brothers for? Why don't we just make a company and base it somewhere else, base it in San Francisco?
So we decided to make a kind of alternative studio in San Francisco called American Zoetrope.
They named the company after the Zoetrope, a pre-film animation device that produces the illusion of moving pictures. Amongst the founders of American Zoetrope, we have John Corti.
He had made about 3 or 4 movies, all on his own. They were very individual, distinctive, and personal.
They walked into my studio, and Francis walked in and he saw 2 ARC projectors, a 3-channel sound mixing setup, nice big screen and big speakers, and he said, my God, he said, you've done what we've been talking about doing.
Corti directed the Star Wars spin-off Caravan of Courage, an Ewok adventure, and was the mentor of a young David Fincher when he was trying to get into the film industry in San Francisco in the 80s. Carroll Ballard was also there. He became also a film director, and his most successful film was The Black Stallion. Robert Dalba, a film editor who has worked on films like October Sky, Jurassic Park 3, or Captain America: The First Avenger. Writer and director John Milius, credited or uncredited writer of many classic Hollywood films such as Dirty Harry, Apocalypse Now, or Jaws. Spielberg has said that Milius was key to the group of young filmmakers known as the New Hollywood.
John is a wonderful writer. I think we all did. I read the first draft of Apocalypse Now. The movie is not that much different than John's very first draft.
You smell that? What? Napalm, boy. Nothing else in the world smells like that. I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
That was pure Milius. The helicopter battle, the surfing, the Playboy bunnies out there.
He gave me solid pages for Jaws. Those were 10 solid pages.
He and Rick Dreyfuss called up and they said, we have to have a reason why this guy hates sharks. And they were going to shoot it that afternoon.
You were on the Indianapolis?
What happened?
It was brilliant. It was just the best writing in the whole darn script.
And of course, Coppola and Lucas, who were the president and vice president of the company.
So we said, this is it. We're going to buy a place up here and we're going to move up here.
One of American Zoetrope's first productions was a road movie called Rain People. With a crew of only 14 technicians, along with the actors, and a minimum budget, the film was shot on location traveling through several states.
We had the old Dodge van. That was our grip, electric, everything.
This mobile unit had, all the cameras on one side and all the sound equipment on another and the dolly on top. And we built that together and George painted the cases. I still have some of them here.
Lucas directed the making of, which was later released under the name of Filmmaker.
I was sort of the assistant everything. And he couldn't pay me, so he said, what I'll get you a deal to write a screenplay.
Walter Murch decided to join American Zoetrope.
So that's when I called Walter and I said, Walter, we need help.
And I thought, great. And then he said, well, it's in San Francisco. And I thought, even better.
I wanted George also to make a film, and George wanted to make a feature version of THX 1138.
After we had finished the mix on The Rain People, George and I sat down with the ideas and rewrote the story.
Just as in 1984, the main character of THX 1138 lives in a futuristic and dystopian world. He is played by Robert Duvall, who would also appear later in the conversation in a role known as the director, who is actually the client who hires the services of Gene Hackman.
I'd been working with Bobby Duvall on The Rain People, so we became friends.
I liked that idea because I hadn't played like the lead in the movie, but nothing was really solidified until after the shooting of The Rain People.
The population is controlled by drugs to annihilate their feelings. Relationships are forbidden, and the Big Brother is substituted by a figure called Om. It has the face of Jesus Christ and acts as a confessor. This underground world is controlled by a diabolic surveillance system. Cameras and microphones are all over the place.
People are watching people. It's a society more or less controlled by robots. The other theme that runs through the film is rampant consumerism. Consumerism without purpose. Simply to buy things for the sake of buying things.
So the only purpose of these objects is to be bought, destroyed, recycled, and bought again.
To sum up, an Orwellian world.
Conformity, disintegration of emotions, about trying to make everything perfect in a way that was nightmarish.
American Zoetrope had an agreement with Warner Brothers Pictures to produce and distribute 5 films. One of them would be The Conversation.
I wasn't surprised at the reaction the studio had when they finally saw it.
When the executives at Warner saw THX 1138, they hated it and cancelled the agreement with Coppola.
I had made the decision to make a reasonably abstract film in the Hollywood theatrical marketplace.
The film was released in 1971 and it was a commercial failure. It bankrupted Zoetrope and its dream for making independent films outside Hollywood major studios.
This definitely was of a time when there was a lot more liberal thinking in Hollywood, in the studios. Now these kinds of films are made outside of Hollywood. You gotta remember, in those days there was no independent American films made.
Coppola had to accept a film that no one wanted to do for Paramount Pictures in order to recover the money for his company. And Lucas decided to quit American Zoetrope to found a company on his own. But that's another story. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Soon we will publish the next episode of the series, where we'll analyze the writing and shooting process of Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation.